At the end of May, the Civilian Secretariat of Police released for public comment proposed amendments to the Firearms Control Act of 2000 that would have far-reaching and dire consequences for ordinary citizens of the Republic. Amongst other changes, it proposed banning the ownership and use of firearms for the purposes of self-defense, as well as heavily restricting sport shooters and hunters pertaining the amount of firearms they can legally own and the amount of ammunition that may be in their possession. It also would outlaw the reloading of ammunition on reloading presses in the privacy of your own homes. The result thereof would be to disarm law-abiding citizens of the most effective tools with which to defend themselves and their families in the sixth most homicidal nation on earth. It would also completely eviscerate and destroy the sport shooting fraternity, one of the most important foundational cornerstones of safe, responsible, knowledgeable, and proficient firearm ownership in the country. The hunting sector and industry would also be dealt a grave blow, as would all industries forward and backward linked to it, such as hospitality, conservation, agriculture, and so on and so forth. Needless to say, the proposed amendments would be disastrous for the firearms industry in South Africa and almost entirely destroy private civilian firearm ownership as a whole. These proposed amendments are based on a socio-economic impact study that is unreferenced, poorly researched, and makes itself guilty of extensive fallacious reasoning. Fortunately, thanks to private organizations and individuals who brought immense pressure to bear upon the Civilian Secretariat in the form of PIE applications and threatened litigation, the CSP released to the public for the first time in 6 years the Wits School of Governance report pertaining the Firearms Control Act of 2000. This is a 178-page document containing research spanning a period of 15 years, from the year 2000 till the end of 2014, pertaining to the effect the Firearms Control Act of 2000 had on crime and violence in the Republic of South Africa. The Firearms Control Act of 2000 was found to have negligible, if any, impact on violent crime and murder rates over the period in question. Fewer than 5% of crimes committed in that period were found relevant to the FCA, and amongst other recommendations, the Wits School of Governance report recommends that the authorities break their obsession with amending the Firearms Control Act of 2000 and refocus their efforts instead into strengthening policing and police operations in the Republic, the only element that was found to have a meaningful impact upon crime or violence. It essentially confirms something we've been saying all along, that criminals ignore gun laws and that gun laws do not have an impact on crime or violence. Instead, all that gun laws can achieve is to leave ordinary people defenceless against criminals who ignore these laws. It is therefore alarming to note that the government, which would be the Minister of Police, the Civilian Secretariat, and SAP's top management, would take this report from the Wits School of Governance that they commissioned and paid for with tax money and bury it for a period of 6 years purely because it didn't agree or align with their agenda of civilian disarmament. Instead of publishing the Wits School of Governance report and basing any proposed legislative amendments upon its contents and recommendations, the Civilian Secretariat and the Minister of Police instead deceived the public and Parliament pertaining to the impact gun laws can have on crime and violence, and manufactured their own report in a rather slapdash method. To add insult to injury, in October 2018, the National Commissioner of Police, Kegla Sitola, admitted to Parliament that the SAPS is overstretched and that it is impossible for the police to fulfill their constitutional mandate. His words were scarce cold when 3 years of consecutive budget cuts amounting to nearly 20% of SAP's budget were announced. This revelation by the National Commissioner in 2018 was all but confirmed over the past week, as violent riots, public looting, and arson attacks gripped 2 provinces and no fewer than 5 metros, illustrating that ordinary citizens are indeed very much on their own and that a massive safety and security vacuum exists. Fortunately, ordinary citizens with legally licensed firearms and existing structures such as CPFs and neighborhood watches could fill the safety and security vacuum and diminish to a very large degree the amount of damage done by the chaos, while the security forces were caught off guard and completely overwhelmed. This illustrates again the old mantra that you are always the first responder to your personal emergency, that nobody is coming to save you, especially the government, and that you need the resources, tools, talents, and the guns in order to most effectively protect yourself, your family, your neighborhood, and everything else that matters to you. Had the government, Bheki Cele, and the Civilian Secretariat had their way, ordinary citizens would be disarmed and incapable of filling this vacuum, leaving them entirely defenseless against a mob of violent looters and rioters. It is therefore obvious that it is highly important for ordinary citizens to make their voice heard pertaining to these proposed amendments. I've added the link to the Dear South Africa public participation platform in the description below. Click on it and follow the instructions in order to tender your individual submission and join 135,000 South Africans who have already made their voice heard pertaining these proposed amendments. You only have until the 2nd of August to comment, so please don't waste time, spread this message as far and wide as you can, and do your part in order to be an active citizen.